In The Sopranos, we've seen plenty of girlfriends come and go. But for the series' main protagonist, Tony Soprano, he clearly displays the most amount of infidelity. While at times throughout the series, Tony can be seen as a loving father figure and husband, can be seen as a ruthless killer, a sociopath, but behind all of this, Tony Soprano can also be seen throughout the show as having many girlfriends. And throughout the 6 seasons, women are an integral part of the show, as they also provide the character growth and development for Tony Soprano. Whether this is the relationship Tony had with his mother Livia, his numerous sessions with his therapist in Dr. Melfi, or the many girlfriends that Tony would accumulate over these 6 seasons. In this video, I will be analyzing each of Tony's girlfriends and comparing and contrasting their similarities and differences when it came to their affairs with Tony Soprano and what each woman carried as a lesson for Tony. Before we get started, if you love The Sopranos, be sure to click subscribe and click that bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content. Throughout The Sopranos, Tony Soprano is no stranger when it comes to having relationships with women. And throughout the series, while he does involve himself in many sexual encounters, relationships, dreams, or even thoughts about women, whether this is Dr. Melfi, an employee of Barone Sanitation, the boss of the Camorra family in Annalisa Zucca, his attempt to start a relationship with Adriana La Cerva, or even the plethora of girls from the Bada Bing. Unfortunately for Tony, these women don't really count as girlfriends and are more of either a one-night stand kind of interaction or fantasy for Tony. But before we can dive into the many girlfriends of Tony Soprano, we must first understand his relationship with women and why he treats women in such a way, and find the root for why he ends up with such emotionally damaged women to begin with. Of course, this begins with Tony's hostile relationship with his mother Livia, as it's this relationship that Tony had with his mother that leads him to suppress his emotional feelings, but also be attracted to distressed and broken women, as despite Tony's best efforts to show support, love, and care for his mother, she continuously belittled Tony and pushed him away. And throughout the series, this made Tony constantly follow suit, mimic, or replay that relationship, thus resulting in Tony being attracted to women extremely similar to his mother in attempts to find and earn the love from these women that he never got from his mother. When we're first introduced to Tony Soprano, we immediately know that he has a girlfriend, as in the pilot episode, we can see that Tony has a blonde girlfriend with him on the Stugats. And when he takes his girlfriend out for dinner, he brings Carmela to the very same restaurant the next night. So we can see that Tony is a seasoned professional when it comes to having a girlfriend. And while this same woman that we see in the pilot episode is characterized as Tony's first girlfriend in the series, the first official and credited girlfriend that we are introduced to is that of Irina Peltsin. Irina is a Russian immigrant who's also an exotic dancer, as Irina and Tony met at the Bada Bing. Irina is madly in love with Tony, as she desires a long-term relationship with him despite Tony being married. However, Tony refuses to leave Carmela due to his children, AJ and Meadow, being in the picture. It's during the beginning stages of their relationship where Tony can be seen increasingly annoyed by Irina, as Irina was treated to the most luxurious lifestyle out of all of Tony's other girlfriends. Whether this was expensive dinners and nights out on Tony's boat. It's in season 2, however, when Tony decides to cut off all ties to Irina as a result of feeling guilty from his infidelities. It's here where we watch Irina drunkenly attempt suicide by trying to overdose on sleeping pills. As Tony eventually pays her off, she would eventually come back into Tony's life later in the series. However, come season 4, we discover that Irina is now dating Tony's business friend, Assemblyman Zellman. And while at first, Tony didn't seem to care, but as the episode progressed, we can see that it clearly bothers him. As in the 7th episode of season 4, we watch Tony drunkenly cry over the Shy Lights' song Oh Girl, which reminds Tony of Irina. With this scene, we can see that the relationship that Tony had developed with Irina was passionate and personal, despite the two not being able to build a life together. And while she was the first girlfriend we saw with Tony Soprano, she still is the only girlfriend to ever make Tony Soprano show emotion. Later on, we watch Tony make a surprise visit to their home, only to beat Zellman and embarrass him, causing an end to Irina and Zellman's relationship. While Tony seemed to break up the relationship of Irina and Zelman, Irina seeked revenge later in the series by drunk dialing Carmela, revealing to her Tony's affair with Irina's cousin Svetlana. This, of course, was the final straw for Carmela, after years of putting up with Tony's infidelities, causing Tony and Carmela to briefly separate. This shows the lasting impact that both Irina and Tony had on one another, as their relationship was basically on and off throughout 4 seasons of the show. While Svetlana is more of a one-night stand for Tony and not a girlfriend, I'm going to include her here in this video simply due to her lasting impact she had on the show. Out of all the mistresses Tony had over these 6 seasons, Svetlana was the most intriguing and different. Not because she had one prosthetic leg, but due to the fact that Tony admired her toughness, resilience, and her uncomplaining attitude where she refused to allow her disability and misfortune to get in the way of her ambitions, lifestyle, and happiness. Svetlana was unlike any of Tony's other girlfriends, as she was more balanced and less diva-like, unlike all of Tony's other extramarital affairs. In many ways, Tony related himself to Svetlana more than any of the other girlfriends he accumulated throughout the show. He admired her toughness and determination to not let her disability affect her outlook on life. Compared to all the other girlfriends Tony had, even his wife Carmela, who desired the luxurious lifestyle that Tony Soprano carried with him. It's Svetlana who supports Tony's emotional side, unlike his very own wife Carmela. Nowhere do we see this more than in Tony and Carmela's argument in Whitecaps, where Tony displays how he can converse with Svetlana, unlike Carmela. In Season 3, we were introduced to Gloria Trillo, a powerful saleswoman for Mercedes who seemed to ruin multiple relationships. Gloria and Tony come to meet purely by chance when Dr. Melfi double-booked both Gloria and Tony in for an appointment. Instantly, Tony is attracted to Gloria. As with Gloria, her desire and affection towards Tony is different, as she isn't attracted towards Tony simply due to his money, unlike what we've seen before with Tony's previous girlfriend in Irina. Gloria can provide for herself. As in the beginning stages of Tony's relationship with Gloria, it's her independence that provides Tony with a sense of relief and emotional freedom when it comes to his relationship with Gloria. However, their relationship quickly turns sour once Tony realizes what Gloria's true colors reveal during an altercation over slashed tires. As Gloria at times can be seen showing jealousy behavior, depressive attitude, and borderline personality disorder, which we've seen before in Tony's mother Livia. Nowhere are these traits more apparent when Tony decides to break it off between Gloria and himself, as Tony comes to the realization that Gloria is a spitting image of his mother once Gloria reveals her depressed attitude.
For you.
My mother was just like you.
For you.
Throughout all of Tony's relationships, almost all women have said that if Tony were to leave, they would take their own life.
I'm gonna fucking kill myself.
However, in this case of Gloria, it's different, as when she threatens to call Carmela in a fit of rage after Tony decides to leave Gloria due to business obligations, Tony snaps and threatens to kill Gloria. However, what's different here is the fact that Gloria wanted Tony to kill her, as this shows just how depressed Gloria was. It's only after their separation that Tony discovers that Gloria committed suicide by hanging herself. He later confronts Dr. Melfi with the news and becomes angry with the fact that Dr. Melfi didn't help Gloria more. Tony's anger that comes out as a result of the death of Gloria displays his love and affection towards Gloria despite her similarities and traits resembling his mother, as this relationship is very much like the relationship Tony had with Livia. The separation between Tony and Carmela seemed inevitable, as leading up to their issues, we watched Tony countlessly cheat on Carmela. And one of his gumars before their ultimate separation was Valentina La Paz. And while Tony tried to hide his relationship from not only Carmela like we would typically see throughout the series, he was also doing so when it came to his friends, as when we were first introduced to Valentina, she was initially with Ralph. However, she was quickly attracted to Tony, and soon the two began a brief secret relationship. While Tony is reluctant at first due to her connection to Ralph, he quickly jumps at the opportunity due to Valentina revealing to Tony Ralph's weird sexual habits and not meeting Valentina's sexual needs, as this was later confirmed thanks to one of Ralph's many lovers and Tony's sister Janice, with Tony secretly getting answers just to meet his own satisfactions. However, Tony and Valentina's secret relationship wouldn't be kept for long, as one of Valentina's nails falls off and lands into one of the pockets of Tony's trousers. This would later get discovered by an enraged Carmela when she is doing laundry, leading to the beginning of the end of Carmela having enough of Tony's infidelities. During Tony and Carmela's relationship throughout the 4th season, Tony pawned off Valentina's prankster attitude onto Carmela, which irritated Carmela, as Tony tried to incorporate a more upbeat relationship with Carmela like he had developed with Valentina. However, Tony and Valentina's relationship and jokester mentality would abruptly end when Valentina would accidentally set herself on fire, resulting in Valentina having intense burns all over her body and losing most of her hair as her scalp was burned. Ultimately, this was Tony's way out of the relationship, as he tells her while she's hospitalized that he's getting back together with Carmela. As much like Tony's previous relationships with Irina and Gloria that had both women display suicidal thoughts and attempts, Valentina here is no different, as she responds to this news with the remark that she is going to kill herself, as there's something about Tony being attracted to emotionally and mentally unstable women, like Dr. Melfi has previously mentioned to him, as this all goes back to the root of why he's attracted to these specific women in the first place, and that is Tony's mother, Livia.
I think we should discuss what attracted you to Gloria in the first place.
Oh, we've been through that already.
And Irina before her. Depressive personality, unstable, impossible to please. Does that remind you of any other woman?
The relationship that Tony had with Valentina was one of the more brief relationships that Tony had developed, as in hindsight, his relationship with Valentina was more of a fling, if anything. While only appearing in 4 episodes, there's no denying the impact Julianna Skiff provided Tony Soprano's outlook on life when it came to women after he was shot by Uncle Junior. When we are first introduced to Julianna, she is a real estate agent for Century 21, as she tries to buy Caputo's Poultry, a building owned by Tony, for $330,000. And while Tony finds her attractive, it's her persistence that initially impressed Tony. However, when Tony tries to seduce her during a business meeting, she declines due to being engaged. After multiple offers, Tony finally accepts the offer and agrees to sign the papers in person at Julianna's place. Freshly recovered from his gunshot wound at the beginning of season 6, the two begin to undress one another after signing the papers. And it's the undressing that reminds Tony of Carmela taking care of him while he was recovering from being shot. It's here where Tony is filled with feelings of guilt and shame and decides to not proceed further with the relationship with Julianna. The self-control that Tony Soprano displays here was something that we had never seen from Tony before up until this point in the series, and something we wouldn't see again. After her brief encounter with Tony Soprano, Julianna meets Christopher Moltisanti at an AA meeting, and the two reflect on their first encounter at Satriale's, sparking an affair between the two. With Tony filled with regret, he tries to spark up another relationship with Julianna. However, this time, Julianna is more distant and unapproachable than their first encounter. It's later revealed that Christopher and Julianna were using heroin again, and the relationship was later revealed to Tony thanks to Christopher unwillingly telling Tony to simply avoid any suspicion of Christopher using drugs again. With the death of Christopher in the 18th episode, Kennedy and Heidi, Julianna attends the wake simply to pay her respects to Christopher, as this is the last time we'd see of Julianna. And while Julianna wasn't officially a mistress of Tony Soprano, there's certainly no denying her impact she had on him, as it feels as she's the one who got away for Tony Soprano. Never in the series had we seen Tony Soprano in such disgust and regret when it came to a woman like we have seen here with Julianna. While Sonia wasn't technically a girlfriend of Tony Soprano, as in her single episode appearance, she was more of a one-night stand for Tony, and in this same episode, we discover that she was once a girlfriend of Christopher's. So to possibly seek payback towards Christopher, even with him being deceased, and relieve himself from guilt and shame, Tony flies out to Las Vegas to meet Sonia for an hallucinogenic gambling trip to clear his mind and get rid of all the negative energy that surrounded him, specifically when it comes to death, as this was towards the end of the series and Tony knew his days were eventually numbered. And it's after the death of Christopher that Tony spends lots of time reflecting and agonizing over his death. As a part of Tony feels relief as one of his biggest so-called blunders of his career is now gone, but also he adored his cousin and is caught in a moral dilemma, as it's ultimately Sonia who acts as a safety blanket that allows Tony to escape from the death of Christopher. Sonia doesn't really teach Tony any lessons throughout their one-night stand, but Tony does come to realization while high on mushrooms that Christopher is dead. Whether this is Sonia's doing, Tony's, or the drugs, this is ultimately the only lesson Tony learned from his time spent with Sonia. Throughout most of Tony Soprano's relationships, he's struck by the sheer beauty of these women. Whether this is Irina, Gloria, Valentina, or Julianna, he's immediately attracted to all of these women based on their looks. But beneath their looks lies their true personality, negative traits, flaws, and characteristics, as these various women represent multiple personalities and an unstable relationship with Tony Soprano. It's also ironic that of all these women that we see Tony Soprano with, it's Svetlana, the least glamorous of them all, that provides Tony with the most insight throughout all of his mistresses, as the relationship that Tony has with all of these girls throughout the series is very similar to that of the relationship that Tony had constantly searched for in his relationship with his mother, which is why Tony was ultimately attracted to these women in the first place. Through the many suicide attempts, the tears, breakups, and lies throughout Tony Soprano's infidelities, it's clear that almost all of these women represent one thing, and that is of Tony's mother, Livia. Whether this is their negative attitude, their suicidal thoughts, their jealousy, their greed, Tony could never escape all of these feelings that he felt when it came to his mother, even with his mother dead. What are your thoughts about the many girlfriends of Tony Soprano? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click like, and for more Sopranos content, be sure to keep it locked here, right here on this channel. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I had a really nice time researching and writing the script for this video, so if you enjoyed this video once again, be sure to click like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya on the next video.